surrender to His will. In 2 Corinthians chapter 8, verse 3, for to their power I bear record, and beyond their power they were willing of themselves. And then verse 12, 2 Corinthians 8 and verse 12, for if there be first a willing mind, it is accepted according to that a man hath, and not according to that he hath not. Submitting the will, your will, to God is necessary. If you're gonna ever be able to just hear from God and obey Him, you're going to have to submit your will to Him. Self-will, being selfish, self-centered, that is a sin. To focus on yourself, that is a sin. It's part of the carnal nature, and it's going to keep you from ever doing what God wants you to do, especially in the area of faith promise. Romans chapter 6 and 7 give us four steps to have victory over the self-centered life, living for yourself. First of all, you need to admit you're carnal. Romans chapter 7, verse 14, for we know that the law is spiritual, but I'm carnal, sold under sin. If I'm going to ever get victory over my self-centeredness, I'm going to have to admit that I'm carnal, sold under sin. Romans chapter 7, verse 18, for I know that in me, that is in my flesh, dwelleth no good thing, for to will is present with me, but how to perform that which is good I find not. I can't do it on my own. I will never be good on my own. It isn't in me to be good. If there is any good that is going to be done in my life, it is going to have to be the Lord that does it. Romans chapter 7, verse 24, O wretched man that I am, who shall deliver me from the body of this sin? I've got to admit my carnality. Number two, I need to acknowledge Jesus, I need to acknowledge that I am crucified as a Christian, that I am crucified with Christ. In Romans chapter 6 and verse 6, knowing this, that our old man is crucified with Him, that the body of sin might be destroyed, and that henceforth we should not serve sin. The only way for me to ever get victory over sin is to reckon myself dead to it. I'm going to have to apply the cross. Number 3, Romans chapter 6 and verse 11, likewise reckon ye also yourselves to be dead indeed unto sin, but alive unto God. Jesus said, if a man will come after me, let him deny himself, take up his cross, and follow me. You want to know you want to get victory over your own self-centeredness, the sin of selfishness, self-centeredness? You're going to have to take up the cross. And I like what Jesus said. He said you're going to have to do it daily. I've noticed that I can come to the altar and say, God, I surrender all. And the next morning, pick up everything I surrendered. I got to start all over again. Now, here's what I think happens. Here's what I believe I've observed over 35 years of ministry, is that a person will come to the altar, I surrender all, they'll give it to God at the altar. The next morning they pick it up, but they leave a grain. And the next day, they come to the altar and they die daily again. They lay it all down and they pick it back up, but they leave another grain. And what happens is day by day, week by week, month by month, year by year of surrender to the Lord, you start pretty soon losing some of that stuff. It might be a long time before you figure it out. Wow, I'm not the same man I used to be. Or in the case of some of you, the same lady I used to be. But the thing will happen over the course of time as you surrender to the Lord. It's a daily thing that we need to do. And then, so I need to reckon myself dead indeed, but then I need to appropriate the Christ life. That means I need to accept that I am alive unto God through Jesus Christ. Paul said in Galatians chapter 2 and verse 20, I think one of the most powerful verses in the Bible. He says, I am crucified with Christ, nevertheless I live, yet not I, but Christ liveth in me. The life which I now live in the flesh, I live by the faith of the Son of God who loved me and gave Himself for me. And when I learn to practice these 4 steps of Romans chapter 6 and verse 7, when I learn to put those in my life, then I get to experience what Paul spoke about in Philippians chapter 2 and verse 13 when he said, for it is God which worketh in you both to will and do of His good pleasure. That's where I want to be in my life. I don't want to be about living and doing what is my pleasure. I want to be about living and doing what is His pleasure. But that's a matter of surrendering the will. How can I give a faith promise offering? I need to settle on the amount that God wants me to give. So he says in 2 Corinthians chapter 9 and verse 7, every man according as he purposeth in his heart, so let him give. So it's something I'm going to need to purpose in my heart. I'm going to need to settle it in my heart. The word purpose means to bring it forth. I'm going to, it's something that I'm going to bring. And then the word heart means with my, I'm going to choose to do this with my mind, will, and emotions. I'm going to, having submitted myself to the Lord and asking Him, what wilt thou have me to do? God is going to give me an amount, and I'm going to hear that in my, not in audible voices, but I'm going to sense it in my mind, and then I am going with my heart to purpose to give it to God. Well, how do I know what God wants me to give? I'm just going to ask Him, Lord, what do you want me to do? And if you're willing to do His will, He's going to impress. I say impress, but He's going to speak to you. I'm going to not in an audible voice, but He's going to tell you. He's going to lay upon your heart, going to settle in your mind some kind of number, some kind of amount that He wants you to give, and that amount might be more than you think you can possibly do. But remember, Mark chapter 9, verse 23, Jesus said, if thou canst believe, all things are possible to him that believeth.